Welcome to Cultural Cooking, a culinary trip around the world. Today we have an amazing experience planned for you. We will be making Flammkuchen and Kaiserschmarrn and telling you the cultures and the story behind the dishes.
To make the dough of a tart flambe, you need the most essential items for making any dough. You need eggs, water, flour, a little bit of salt, and a little bit of oil. Here I used olive oil. You can use many different varieties of oil. Today we are making a tart flambe. This is one of the many traditional foods of European cultures. And especially this food has its origin in the lower and middle Rhine regions. It has a French counterpart, but also German origins.
For Kaiserschmarrn, you will need 30 grams of raisins, 4 eggs, 30 grams of sugar, 8 grams or a packet of vanilla sugar, 375 milliliters of milk, 125 grams of flour, some butter, powdered sugar, and salt. Kaiserschmarrn is a dish that originated in Austria-Hungary in the late 19th century. It is a lightly sweetened pancake that gets its name from the Austrian Emperor or Kaiser Franz Josef I, who was very fond of this kind of fluffy, shredded pancake.
With all your ingredients for the dough ready, you just mix them together and knead using an electric mixer or knead with your hands. I personally prefer to knead with my hands because it gives the dough a more even texture and a more even mix of the ingredients. Once the dough has been rolled out thinly, you cover it in a really thin layer of sour cream or creme fraiche. It doesn't really matter which one you use, just make sure you cover it again with a thin sprinkle of salt and pepper. Next, slice onions into cubes, roughly the size of your bacon cubes, and both of them spread it on top of the sour cream. In the next step, it is already ready for the oven. Make sure you preheat the oven to at least 220 degrees Celsius. You can go up to 250 degrees Celsius using two-sided heat. Make sure you don't use circulating air because that will dry out your dough and make the tart flambe not as crispy as it can be using two-sided heat.
Now to start preparing the Kaiserschmarrn, add the 30 grams of sugar, salt and vanilla sugar into the bowl. The name Kaiserschmarrn is a compound of the words Kaiser, which means emperor, and Schmarrn, which means a scrambled or shredded dish. Schmarren is also a colloquialism used in Austrian and Bavarian to mean trifle, mismatch, mess, rubbish, or nonsense. Then separate the 4 eggs, adding the yolk into the bowl and the egg white into a separate bowl. It is generally agreed that Kaiserschmarrn was first prepared for the Austrian Emperor Francis Joseph I, who lived between 1830 and 1916. However, there are several stories as to how it happened, which I will be telling you throughout this experience. One apocryphal story involves the emperor and his wife, Elizabeth of Bavaria, of the House of Wittelsbach. Obsessed with maintaining a minimal waistline, the Empress Elizabeth directed the royal chef to prepare only light desserts for her, much to the consternation and annoyance of her notoriously austere husband. Upon being presented with the chef's confections, she found it too rich and refused to eat it. The exasperated Francis Joseph quipped, "Now let me see what schmarren our chef has cooked up." It apparently met his approval as he finished his and even his wife's serving. Another story is that Francis Joseph and his wife were traveling the Alps and stopped by a farmer's home for lunch. The farmer was so nervous that he threw all the fanciest ingredients he had into a pan to make a delicious pancake. Worse yet, due to his nervousness and shaky hands, he scrambled the pancake. Hoping to cover up the mess, he then covered it with plum jam. Luckily, the Kaiser thought it was scrumptious. In a separate bowl, measure out the 125 grams of flour. Now whisk the mixture in the bowl until it becomes creamy. Another popular tale is that his wife was a poor cook and couldn't flip a pancake efficiently. She decided to play to her strengths and shredded the pancakes altogether and would serve them up to the Kaiser on a regular basis with jam. And he quite enjoyed them with jam, and it became his favorite dessert. Once it is creamy, add the milk and gradually stir in the flour. In Austria, basic etiquette is very important. So here are a few tips about basic etiquette. Punctuality is highly valued in Austria. Being on time for meetings, appointments, services, and parties is expected. Deadlines are expected to be met with little leeway. In social situations, one should arrive approximately 5 to 10 minutes before the designated time. If you expect delay, inform your Austrian counterpart, or they may leave or begin the event without you. When making or answering phone calls, it is the norm to introduce oneself by saying one's name, typically the surname, but the first name can be used if preferred. It is considered impolite if the caller or receiver does not say their name, even if accompanied with other polite greetings such as hello or good morning. Austrians tend to greet salespeople when entering and leaving the store. The most common greeting is the casual "Grüß dich" or "Grüß Gott," God bless you. Then add the raisins. Now you need to beat the egg whites until they are stiff. Let's take a look at Austrian cuisine, which is often incorrectly equated with Viennese cuisine. It is derived from the cuisine of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. In addition to native regional traditions, it has been influenced above all by Hungarian, Czech, Jewish, and Italian cuisines, from which both dishes and methods of food preparation have often been borrowed. Goulash is one example of this. Austrian cuisine is known primarily in the rest of the world for its pastries and sweets. In recent times, a new regional cuisine has also developed, which is centered on regional produce and employs modern and easy methods of preparation. Every state in Austria has some specialities. In Lower Austria, they have poppies. In Burgenland, polenta. In Styria, pumpkin. In Carinthias, many lakes. They have fish. In Upper Austria, dumpling play a vital role. For Salzburg, the Salzburger Nockerlin are famous sort of souffle. Tyrol has Tyrolean bacon, and Vorarlberg is influenced by the close neighbors Switzerland and the Swabian region in Germany. Thus cheese plays a role, and cheesy Swabian Spätzle are a speciality there. Once they are stiff, carefully fold the egg whites into the dough. Now heat up some butter in a pan. Then add the dough into the pan and heat it up at a low temperature. Keep turning the dough occasionally and tear it into smaller pieces. This cooking process will take somewhere between 15 and 20 minutes, depending on how crunchy or soft you want the Kaiserschmarrn to be. Austrian culture is greatly influenced by the centuries-long Catholic tradition. Daily life and legislation are, however, strictly secular. Social cohesion and tolerance are of the highest significance in Austrian society. Let's look at some of the do's and don'ts of Austrian culture. Do's. A good conversation topic is Austria's regional diversity. Austrians enjoy talking about their home region. Many feel a sense of belonging to their region of birth, even if they left it many years ago. Also show a sense of admiration for Austria's natural beauty and landscapes. Another do is respect an Austrian's personal space. Many value their physical and personal privacy when among strangers, thus ask permission before photographing or taking a video of someone. It is also expected that one will knock on doors before entering. Speaking about personal matters and being more open in body language is more acceptable once you have a well-established relationship with your Austrian counterpart. Do try and engage in enriching conversations. Austrians generally have a love for acquiring knowledge and learning. Show an interest in learning about a topic your Austrian counterpart is passionate about, and likewise feel free to share your thoughts on topics of interest. As for much of Europe, World War II is a sensitive conversation topic, especially for elderly individuals. A feeling of collective responsibility still troubles some Austrians of the older generations. Should the Holocaust and relatable events arise, speak sensitively and neutrally. The younger generation is more open to such discussions. Some of the don'ts. Do not assume Austrians and Germans are the same. There are distinct differences in culture, customs, and values between the two countries. Some Austrians may have a sense of resentment towards Germans. As such, don't refer to an Austrian as a German, and try not to make comparisons between the two countries. Avoid arriving late or canceling an arrangement last minute. Punctuality is highly valued by Austrians. If you anticipate delays, give your Austrian counterpart warning and an apology for your delay. Try not to cloud what you mean out of modesty or shyness. Austrians prefer straightforward and direct communication and questions. Being clear and honest is highly valued. Do not make stereotypes or assumptions about Austrians based on the sound of music, musical, and movie. Approach conversations about migration carefully. Austria is a transit country for asylum seekers traveling from the coast of Italy to Germany, meaning it is common for people to see such transit refugees loitering at stations. Many Austrians are very understanding of the situations, while others view the situations in a negative light. Similar attitudes can be found towards the Roma people.
Once your tart flambe is in the oven, it will take between 7 to 15 minutes, depending on your exact temperature and thickness of your dough. But make sure you look for it every 1 or 2 minutes, because the perfect crispiness of the dough and of your tart flambe can be achieved within this time frame. In its first years of existence, tart flambe was mostly made using a bread dough that was rolled out really thinly, like 1 or 2 millimeters, and then baked at really high temperatures and really few minutes. Mostly in the same oven that was used to bake bread itself, but tart flambe was used to make sure the oven is of enough heat and to use those initial high temperatures that a oven could offer you. Tarte Flambé has a storied history, with its first inceptions along the Rhine regions in France as well as Germany, with all the historical altercation between France and Germany, and through all the variations that came up through changing needs and changing tastes. We now have a variety of tart flambés we can make. In its basis with the dough, they are all quite similar, but what you put on top is where the variety is really happening. Of course, most have onions and bacon or lardons, but you can have them thinly sliced, you can have them cubed, you can have them sauteed before, you can add them on later on, for example, spring onions. But if you want to make a complete 180, you can also make sweet tart flambés. Most common is actually a sweet tart flambé using thin apple slices and a mixture of cinnamon and sugar. Everything else stays the same, but instead of adding salt and pepper, you add cinnamon and sugar onto it. Tastes beautifully, perfect as a second round, perfect as a dessert.
It wasn't until the 19th century when a few innkeepers began to make tart flambé for the public that anyone thought to commercialize it. And about some 20 years ago, they started to get really popular. And now every village on the outskirts of Strasbourg seems to have one, if not two or three, simple restaurants featuring tart flambé. This is also a very popular dish in Germany where it is called Flammkuchen and served in many different variations as restaurants try different toppings as options and may even try deconstructed versions. But the classic bacon, creme fraiche, and onion is really the perfect combination. Anything else veers too close to pizza, while there are times when cheesy meaty gooiness is just what the doctor ordered. The allure of Flammkuchen is that it contains just enough of everything and not a gram more. Once finished, add the Kaiserschmarrn onto a plate and sprinkle some powdered sugar on it. This meal goes well with applesauce as well as plum roaster. This is what a finished Kaiserschmarrn can look like. Thank you for joining us in this cultural cooking experience. Enjoy your meal and feel free to subscribe for more amazing experiences.